welcome to the third episode of the GAIMH-SA podcast. Now today we're lucky enough to be able to have sat down with Tessa Baradon and talk about fathers and the role of fathers within the family unit. Now to give you a little bit of background on Tessa, she came from the field of public health to child psychoanalysis and psychotherapy. She has worked in the public and private sectors as a child and adolescent therapist and has been responsible for the development, implementation and evaluation of services for parents and infants in the NHS and Anna Freud National Centre for Children and Families. Tessa Baradon writes and lectures on child therapy, psychoanalysis, and parent-infant psychotherapy. She is a member of the Association of Child Psychotherapists and the Association of Child Psychoanalysis. Now, Tessa has literally written the book on fathers, amongst many other works that she has put together, and that's what we're going to draw from today. So, without further ado, here is Tessa Baradon. So we're very, very lucky to be able to sit today with Tessa. We're going to be talking about fathers, which is a topic that we don't speak about nearly enough. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
It's my honor.
Okay, so I want to start off talking about the role of the father when it comes to a Western context. What are we talking about when we talk about the father in the family unit?
Okay. Well, there's been a gradual but dramatic change in the role of the father, in as much as fathers are now in Western cultures much more involved in child care, in bringing up the children, and have moved from the traditional role of provider and of discipline person to a much more nurturing role in many families. And that's where research kicks in about what fathers can contribute to children's development. They're talking really about the nurturing father here and what he can contribute. It's also a change from a very mother-infant-centric view of child development, and all our mentors like Bowlby and Winnicott and Klein and Bion, and even attachment research at the beginning, like with the strange situation and so on, were very mother-infant focused. And father was a relatively neglected figure until more recently.
So it's become something that researchers started to almost take a focus on in the last little bit.
Well, one of the most interesting bits of the attachment research was that children create a specific relationship with the mother and the father from the beginning. It's not that they have a relationship with the mother and then develop a capacity to relate also to another figure, the father. But rather the children have the capacity to relate to two people, and probably more, because often there's siblings in the family and grandparents and so on, right from the beginning, and they'll have a particular relationship with each person. So their relationship with their mother may be secure, and with the father secure, or insecure with the mother, but secure with the father, and so on.
Okay. Now, when it comes to fathers, I'm sure there's still a lot of. I'm just thinking, sort of culturally, there's a lot of thought around the dad still being the one that goes out, works, and then comes back and will attach almost to the child later. You know, like the father's time will come later. It's almost this idea of that mom's time is in the beginning, but fathers belong in the beginning as well.
Absolutely. And fathers' brains have been shown to be very malleable, and they change according to the amount of caregiving, i.e. physical and emotional involvement with their child. And it's a dose-response relationship, i.e. the more involved they get, the more the father's brain will resemble the mothering brain.
Okay.
In terms of what is generally called the parental caregiving
Okay.
system. Yeah. And it's hypothesized, and this is the work of someone, very many people, but one of the most interesting writers in the field is someone by the name of Ruth Feldman in Israel, who has shown that there is a parental caregiving neural network that seems to be triggered in the mother by pregnancy and childbirth and lactation, and in the father by the level of responsibility they assume for the care of their child.
Okay. And is this like a hormone-driven thing? Is it oxytocin-driven?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I remember from my reading, and this may very well be outdated, but where mothers tend to, oxytocin is their hormone, and fathers almost use vasopressin in terms of their connectivity with children, which was a little bit, I suppose the pathways may be slightly different.
The pathways seem to be different, and the different brains on sides, and I'm no neurologist or neuropsychologist, so I'm just quoting the literature that I managed to understand.
Well, we're in the same boat there.
So the different parts of the brains, the emotional processing, cognitive processing brains are triggered. But I think from the baby's point of view, the important bit is father's engagement, the quantity and the quality of father's engagement. Will influence how intense, intimate their relationship will be.
And I suppose the lack of the father is going to play a huge role as well, just in your overall infant mental health. If you get a situation where father's not present at all.
The father is always present, because if he's not present physically, he's present in the mother's mind.
Ah, okay.
For better or for worse. He might be a father who the mother can convey positive emotions about this father figure to the baby. It might be that the mother conveys a very negative image to the baby, but he is always present through her internal image of the father's. That
is fascinating. Yeah. So being there physically or not, the remnant is there, and the idea is still being expressed through into the infant.
Absolutely. And if there is no father mentioned, then the child is picking up a message from that, and the baby will grow up with questions that, for example, he may feel that he can't bring to the mother. Where's my father? Why isn't he with me? Who is my dada? And so on.
Yeah.
Child therapists are very familiar with this, that there are always questions in the child about their father.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, with fathers, like I've read a lot of research where we look at, and coming back to what you were speaking about in the beginning, where we look at the effect that crying of the infant will have on the mother, and what it will do to like their autonomic nervous system, how they're going to respond. Have there been any studies that you've seen that have looked primarily at fathers and their response?
Do you know, I'm not...
Just thinking, I haven't seen any.
Those studies. I think the studies there may be, I don't know them. Whereas, of course, I do know the studies looking at mothers' brains. But the research that I'm familiar with seems to focus on the kind of play the fathers conduct with their children, and how does this experience differ from the experience of the child with the mother, including with babies and not only older children. And it seems that with babies and little ones, the type of play of the father is different from the mother's in two ways.
Okay.
We're all familiar with the rough and tumble idea, but what it is that the fathers seem to excite children, their little ones, in different ways to the way mother excite. So fathers seem to widen the range of the child's emotional stimulation and excitement. And the pattern of the excitement seems to be that there is higher peaks and more frequent peaks of excitement in play with the father than with the mother.
That's fascinating.
So it seems that fathers expand the infant's capacity to tolerate and regulate emotion, excitable emotion.
Mm.
And that they also extend the limits of their emotion.
Sure.
And emotional regulation.
It resonates with me so much, because I just think of patients I see in my practice where a little baby will come in and the mom will say, we're perfect, we have this day where we look into each other's eyes and we calmly connect with each other, and then dad comes home and it's 5 o'clock, but dad must pick him up and throw all over but that's our connection, is how we do it. And I can see a lot of sort of disparity between the mum and the dad going, you're not connecting, but they're like, but now it's nice to understand that we are connecting just in our own way. And also,
yes, in a way that's very facilitating of child development. And not only little boys, but also little girls, of course.
Yeah, because the little girls like being thrown up in the air just as much, huh?
Absolutely. And it does the same kind of thing in terms of their expanding their emotional experience and regulation. There's another interesting thing, for example, and that shows that behaviors that would be identified in mothers as frightening to the child, the kind of behaviors that are identified as being associated with disorganized attachment,
mm-hmm.
in fathers, as long as the father picks up when the child is getting overstimulated and soothes the child, fathers can behave in ways like that to the child. I.e., the same kind of behaviors will be experienced and carry different meaning for the child if played with by the mother or the father, as long as the adult can regulate the child afterwards, the father.
So you've got to be able to see that the child is getting to an awake, alert, upset state now, and you've got to be able to have your your triggers in there to be able to bring them back down, and
Absolutely. So fathers can be playing and then suddenly go, ah! And the baby might be startled and laugh, and the father will do it again, and so on. And then if the baby gets a little too startled, then father will stop it. Whereas if a mother is tending and does the ah, she might fall into a category of a frightening mother suddenly, and unpredictably frightening, which with certain of those behaviors, there's a link with disorganized attachment.
That is fascinating. I had never thought about it. I'd never thought about it in terms of that. And depending where the behavior comes from the mom or the dad, it gets taken in a different way, because again, they fill different roles.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
You know that in South Africa you have two writers that really argue against a notion that the father's function, and part of these things do seem to be, the function of the father's function, who argue very much against the identification of a father with those functions.
Mm. Okay, well that's so and that I would gather would be quite an issue then, because we're kind of going against the flow of what the...
Yes, well I think what I'm saying is that if there is a father in the family,
mm-hmm.
and the family is a cohesive functioning family, and there is co-parenting and mutual support and so on. Fathers and mothers can fruitfully fulfill very different functions as well as very similar functions. They can both be nurturing and mothering, in quotes, and the father can also bring additional dimensions that are conducive to child development.
I see what you're saying, and it really opens the dad's role up for them to understand that, to be able to go, look, you are not just the limit pusher. You can also form that nurturing sort of middle, I think that's phenomenal.
Absolutely. And if one takes the slogan, Dads Matter, one can flesh that slogan out with the examples that I've given you. One can't then go to the opposite and say, well, if there isn't a dad, then it's going to impact negatively on the child's development.
I get you.
That's not what we're talking about.
I get you, because roles will then be filled by different people in different ways.
Absolutely.
And I suppose
exactly.
the child's brain is so plastic that it can take that input, it can deal with it, it can almost compartmentalize and work out, and then it will have its limits pushed by the mom, because that's what's going to happen. And I would suppose maybe then moms would start to fill those roles out as well and start to think to themselves, what else would they be getting? And yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Really, really interesting. I would just like to ask you quickly, just before we finish off, what do we do for our dads almost to look after their mental health as they go through this transition? Because I think there's a lot of emphasis that's placed on moms and looking after moms, which is absolutely perfect. But what do we do for our dads that are also going through this metamorphosis?
Well, I think first of all we have to recognize that we're very neglectful of fathers. And that awareness immediately raises the question of, well, why are we neglecting them, and how can we be inclusive? So, for example, very often a GP or in England, the equivalent, a health visitor or a health professional will meet the mother in the 6-week postnatal checkup and saying, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? Very rarely will that same health professional even ask, and how's your husband feeling? Appointments are usually organized during the day for mother and baby. Very rarely is thought given to the father's work patterns, and so appointments arranged in the evening. And this despite our knowledge that the rates of postnatal depression among fathers are perhaps similar to those amongst mothers. Certainly here in England, they estimate it to range between 5 and 15%. Fathers can have the same kinds of anxieties in terms, not the same as mothers, but the same range of identities, of crises in terms of identity, in terms of intimacy, in terms of responsibility, all those kinds of things that parents brings up. So it's up to professionals to help mothers be more aware of their partner's mental health, to directly inquire about fathers, and to bring fathers into consultations.
Wow.
At the Freud Center, for example, once we decided that fathers need to be present because when the babies have mothers and fathers, the rate of fathers' participation in therapy has increased dramatically.
Wow. I get you. Absolutely. So they really have to be looked after, added into the equation. And I suppose almost, like you say with those health visitor stories, like actually made to feel like they are part of the team and have an appointment done when they are, almost, because the dads are stoic people, they carry on and they're in the background just supporting and whatever. But I think maybe pushed into the foreground a little bit, I think a lot of them would maybe appreciate that and almost feel that they have more of a place in those, especially in those first months.
I think a lot of misinformation exists. As you said, you know, that fathers only come into play later on in the young child's life. A lot of that misinformation, it still continues to play a role.
Well, I'm glad there's a lot of research moving in this direction. That's starting to open this up and almost like pull the curtain back a little bit and give us a little bit more of an insight into the family dynamic and who brings what to the table, and and where you can be most impactful in the family's life. Tessa, thank you so much.
Just how important it is to see how the fathers and mothers function together.
I think that's most important, because that's the unit that is going to inform the child's later relationships, the personality, the work relationships. It's all going to come from there. Thank you so much for your time. I've really appreciated this. I have learned a lot in the last couple of minutes, so thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Mike. It's been very interesting to talk to you.